Welcome to Blackhawks Insider, the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks, presented by ChevyDrivesChicago.com. Drive what Captain Jonathan Toews drives. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you use, and like our YouTube page as well. All videos are posted on the Blackhawks YouTube page. We have a great show planned for you today. Kaylee and I get into the NCAA men's hockey tournament, a look at the standings, and then somewhat of an off-the-wall interview with NASCAR driver Kurt Busch, who happens to be a huge Chicago sports fan. Stick around, it's all ahead on Blackhawks Insider. And it's great to be with you once again. I'm Chris Vosters, joined by my co-host Kaylee Chelios. Kaylee, it is great to be home. It feels like I'm moving into my apartment again after a really long month of March travel with the Blackhawks. Doing laundry again, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. But they say the NHL grind is no joke. And listen, I really felt it this week with that long road trip.
Hey, 15 games in the month of March, longest road trip, and how many laundry loads did you have, Chris? How many suits do you pack on an 11-day trip? Or is it not 11 days? Maybe it was 8?
No, it was an 11-day trip. I mean,
trip.
if you count the travel days, yeah.
Yep.
I packed 2 suits and then 5 shirts for each one of the games. So
Very nice.
I kind of rotated things around that way, and then I think 4 ties, which don't take up a lot of space. But I mean, it was a challenge. I mean, you know me, I pride myself on packing light, and I had to go to two suitcases for this trip. Two
I
carry-on
noticed
size
that
suitcases.
actually, that small duffel compared to my 66-pound large suitcase was impressive, but I was pleased to see that you needed a second one.
Yeah, I had to. I was packing like our guest on the show today, Kurt Busch, does with all these extra suitcases. We'll pay that off for you later on in the show. But lots going on in the hockey world, Kaylee. The NCAA tournament is going on right now. The Frozen Four field is set. There were some exciting games, and there are a lot of Blackhawks prospects that are playing for their NCAA college teams going through the tournament, and now will be competing in the Frozen Four as well. So Boston University is in the Frozen Four, led by goalie Drew Commesso, who's played really well. He's a Blackhawks draft prospect. And as a Big Ten fan, you know I'm a Big Ten fan, the Big Ten Conference very well represented in the Frozen Four between Michigan and Minnesota. And there were also Ohio State and Penn State had good tournament runs as well. So what are your thoughts on the NCAA tournament so far?
Yeah, I think it's been exciting, and as a Big Ten fan myself, I thought it was cool to see how many blowouts there were in the first round. That has never happened with so many teams winning by a landslide. The amount of goals that were put up, in particular by Big Ten teams, including Ohio State, and you mentioned there's 7 prospects, from the Blackhawks that are participating or that were in the NCAA. So it's pretty cool. I saw Jake Wise for the Blackhawks. He captains Ohio State. His line put up 10 points collectively. Just a lot of points, high point totals, a lot of goals, a lot of blowouts in the first round. So I think it's going to make for an exciting Frozen Four, and it was pretty fun getting to watch that Michigan-Penn State game, the way it unfolded, and seeing Nazar, and you mentioned Drew Commesso too, who very possibly may join and sign his NHL contract after BU this year, and who knows, maybe there's going to be a good 1-2 punch down in Rockford, depending on how things shake out with Jackson Stauber between Soderblom and Drew Commesso, who has only let in 2 goals in 2 games in the tournament. So a lot of impressive stats from that perspective, a lot of big blowouts, but I think that says something about the competitiveness and just how many players after this tournament's over may go on to sign contracts this year compared to years past. It seems like, as opposed to just a few, there may be a handful, 10 or so players that go on to sign NHL contracts, and it's going to be competitive.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Frank Nazar, a Blackhawks first-round draft pick last season with a goal and an assist for Michigan in their first-round game against Colgate. The final score 11-1, which is crazy. Whether Nazar comes out or not, I have absolutely no insight into this. I personally don't think he will. Remember, he missed the first chunk of the college hockey season with recovering from sports hernia surgery. So I think when he gets a full offseason to develop and then a full college hockey season healthy, I think he will really, really take off, especially in a powerhouse program like Michigan. But Frozen Four field is set. Michigan, Quinnipiac, Minnesota, and Boston University will vie for the Frozen Four championship. And I did, as kind of a segue into our next topic, Kaylee, in Michigan's come-from-behind win over Penn State in the regional final. Michigan was down 1-0 in the third period. Then Adam Fantilli ties the game on a power play goal. Michigan goes on to win it in overtime. But after Connor Bedard, the consensus number one pick in the upcoming draft, Adam Fantilli, who currently plays for the Michigan Wolverines, is considered the number 2 prospect in the upcoming amateur draft. And look, it's no guarantee whether the Hawks finish with the fewest number of points or not. It's no guarantee that they get the first overall pick, the second, the third. There's a lot that's still up in the air with the way the NHL does its draft lottery. So I've been keeping an eye on Adam Fantilli personally, just in case, because there's a chance that the Hawks end up with him in their lap, and that would be a great thing because he seems like a fabulous player.
Yeah, any other draft, and he'd be considered still, possibly a franchise-changing number 1. So it's not really like a secondary option. He's really that talented, that elite, and depending on what happens at the end of the tournament, I don't know how much more there would be for him at this point when he gets drafted. He probably would leave school. I mean, obviously, if you win a championship this year, it seems like it's even more enticing to want to leave and immediately go try to make your mark in the NHL that way. He has the confidence, the skill set. He looks like he's going to be able to transition. You never know. Sometimes you put all this pressure on these kids coming out of the NCAA, and it's hard and it's a lot. But, you look at even World Junior Championship, what was so impressive about Bedard, and this isn't a slight at all at Fantilli, was just his ability under pressure to perform the way he did at that level, even with everybody watching him at that young of an age, is really impressive. And those are things that stand out to you when you're evaluating a player of that caliber over a large body size. So Fantilli may not have put up as impressive numbers in that tournament necessarily, but I think when you look at the larger sample size from him, which is what player development and scouts are looking at, they're extremely impressed by him, and there's a lot that he's been able to accomplish even this season that have put him at another level. And watching him score that goal, obviously, it's no surprise against Penn State that he's the one to put the team on his back and come in clutch. So he's got clutch. He's got it all. He would be a great pick for the Blackhawks if they're fortunate enough to have a top 3 pick. So for me, that's just the hope right now, is that you do get a top 3 pick, whether it's Bedard, whether it's Fantilli. That to me is going to be what I'm hoping for. I'm not necessarily putting all my marbles in a basket for Bedard because, like you said, the lottery is going to play out differently depending on how everything finishes here.
From our perspective, it's hard not to keep an eye on the standings. Just the teams that are in the mix with the Blackhawks for fewest points in the NHL. Going into it's interesting. Going into the season, the Blackhawks were expected to be one of the teams in the mix for fewest points, along with the Arizona Coyotes. Now, the Coyotes are going to get a top 10 pick, but they have outperformed in many ways how people thought they would be at the start of the season. So it hasn't been the Blackhawks and the Coyotes in this race to the bottom, if you will. It's been the Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks and the Columbus Blue Jackets, with the Anaheim Ducks also kind of flirting in the mix as well. Now, if you had to make me predict where the Hawks will finish with now about 2.5 weeks left in the season, I think the Hawks are going to finish with more points than both San Jose and Columbus. It's really close right now. Going into the final week of March, the Hawks have 1 more point than San Jose and 3 more points than Columbus. But the Hawks do some, with Columbus, their season derailed by injuries. When you look at Chicago and San Jose, I think the Blackhawks play harder than the Sharks do, quite frankly. The Sharks have the guy who might win the Norris Trophy on their team, defenseman Erik Karlsson, a defenseman who could very well put up 100 points this season, and they get housed like every game right now. So I think that the Hawks are going to come in with the 3rd worst position going into draft lottery night, which, again, doesn't mean that they're not going to get the 1st overall pick or even the 2nd overall pick. But based on what I'm kind of feeling, based on what I've seen from Columbus and San Jose, I think that the Hawks are going to finish ahead of both of those teams personally in the standings.
I think that's a very accurate statement. I'm with you. I agree that that's probably where they would finish. And from just a macro perspective and general opinion on the Hawks, like when you look at them compared to the San Jose Sharks, I do think they play harder. And like you said, they have Erik Karlsson, who's probably going to win the Norris at the end of the season. There's really nobody else that's having an impact season of defensemen the way he is, despite, maybe some of the arguments you could make in terms of how poorly the Sharks have played. You rarely see defensemen win the Norris on a team that are where the San Jose Sharks are currently. So it's an interesting year for that, but they still do have some, elite talent in that regard. And what the Blackhawks have been able to do, especially as of late, not just with injury, they're playing hard. And if you're management and obviously you want to win every game, that's evident from the coaches for the Blackhawks who have this team playing hard every game. But they're losing games, and they're losing them the right way, if you will, by a goal. The last couple have been really tight, an empty net goal, and it's young players, mistakes, fatigue. They're running into some adversity right now after that long road trip that you just came back from after 11 days. And I still think they're battling hard to the end, a lot more so than I would say Anaheim and San Jose do. And Columbus, like you said, injury stricken. So I think 3rd is a good place to guess for you, Chris.
And look, if the Blackhawks do get the 3rd overall pick, Jonathan Toews was the 3rd overall pick. So, it's certainly not the end of the world or whatever. Yep. And it's also not a guarantee that just because the Blackhawks finish with the 3rd fewest points that they get the 3rd pick. They could go up to 1. They could drop to 5. Who knows? So
it's got to hold your breath.
You got to hold your breath. Exactly. Well, as we mentioned at the start of the show, we have a very special guest joining Blackhawks Insider this week. He is NASCAR driver Kurt Busch. Now, we've got a lot of great guests lined up on the Blackhawks Insider Podcast, so it's not like we just reached into a hat and pulled out Kurt Busch's name. He's got a lot of ties to the Chicago sports scene, and he's going to talk to us about a big NASCAR event that's coming to Chicago over the summer. So, without further ado, here we are with Kurt Busch. We are thrilled to be joined by NASCAR Cup Series champion Kurt Busch. Kurt, welcome to the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. It's great to have you. Now, some of our fans, we are a podcast for a hockey team at the end of the day. Some of our fans might be wondering, all right, why do we have a NASCAR driver joining the show? You, however, are a massive Chicago sports fan because your parents grew up in Chicago, and you're going to be in town to promote a NASCAR event that is happening in Chicago over the summer. So we're thrilled to have you at the Blackhawks Blues game coming up on Thursday night. But first of all, let's get into this. Why, understand your parents grew up in Chicago, but how did your fandom as a Chicago sports fanatic evolve?
Well, thank you again, first of all, for having me on the show. And it's great to talk with you guys and talk Chicago sports. And of course, I'll be up there for the NASCAR race. It's the first ever NASCAR Chicago street race, like first ever time we're going to be on the streets. So we'll get into all that later on. But just being a fan from Chicago, like, right, my family, my granddad, they all grew up in Schaumburg, Rolling Meadows, Arlington Heights. And I grew up out in Vegas. They moved out there in the 70s because they said they were done shoveling snow. But I'm a WGN baby. I watched all Chicago sports on WGN as a kid. And anytime I come up to the city, it is my favorite city in the United States.
Kurt, so you're a Chicago sports fan. I think it's so cool, watching you recently in the last few weeks, getting ready for our interview and stuff, just being a Jordan brand athlete. Obviously, Michael Jordan is here. There we go. Repping it as we speak. So their first season was in 2021, and you're a race car driver for Michael Jordan. He loves going to NASCAR events. He's been to quite a few. I just wanted to ask you off the hop, what was your interaction like prior to joining his team with him and getting to know him? And then how did that relationship evolve into what it is now and your partnership?
Yeah, MJ and the whole program here at 2311 Racing, it's so cool. And everybody's so laid back, but everybody is top-notch professionals, and everybody pushes from right here. And that's what I learned in the first 5 minutes with MJ. Like, of course, I'm nervous, and it's a meeting, like an interview, to see if I was going to be the driver with this team. And within the first 5 minutes, he goes, "You know why you're going to be part of this team? He says, I already know that you know how to win. You've got the talent. It's that you have the heart." And that's how he played the game. And that's how I've been coaching all the different employees and the young athletes here that are part of our pit crew, is to dig within and to know the game at a different level. And that's why it's so much fun to race for MJ and for Denny Hamlin.
MJ's a pretty big hockey fan too. I know he was around NHL All-Star Week festivities down in South Florida this winter. And he made some appearances too at the United Center when the Blackhawks were on their Stanley Cup runs. But Kurt, have you been to a Blackhawks game before, or will Thursday night be your first time at the United Center for a Hawks game?
No, I've been to the United Center plenty of times for Hawks games, Bulls games. Saw Bruce Springsteen there probably about 5 years ago. So, I mean, love the place. But yeah, just being an overall sports guy, anytime that I get a chance outside of NASCAR to go to a fun game or a place that I haven't been to before, I check that off the list. And then if there's an open couple days here or there, you'll see me at Wrigley, or you might see me at Soldier Field or the United Center.
Are you going to catch opening day for the Cubs while you're up too, or because opening day for the Cubs is on Wednesday, March 30th? Now that you grew up in Vegas, you live in the Carolinas now. That's a cold opening day up in Chicago. But are you going to get to Wrigley as well?
Yeah, I'll be at opening day. I caught one before, so this will be my second. And we're on the gas with Toyota right now. It's so much fun to be a driver for Toyota Racing, to be part of the TRD development program. And so, yeah, I'll be around the city with my Camry and then be there for opening day. And I think it's going to be decent weather. It shouldn't be too rainy. It shouldn't be too cold, as long as the wind's not blowing, right?
Are you a bleachers guy at Wrigley, or are you going to be in a nice suite?
I'm all over the place. Bleachers are perfect in the summer, right? Yeah, you gotta pick your poison on knowing where to go. And I would hope that we're sitting in the sun, maybe getting a little warmth because it's April. And then, of course, you got to have those fun bleacher days in the summer. And then behind home plate, when Mr. Ricketts hands me a couple tickets, you got to go.
Absolutely. And Kurt, we're going to have you in the broadcast booth at the United Center for that Thursday game against the St. Louis Blues. Can't wait to have you up there. You'll probably still be wearing the monster hat. I wish I could wear this on the broadcast. Believe me, the casual look is more my speed. But We'll make it happen on Thursday in the broadcast booth. Can't wait to have you. And actually, I wanted to ask you too, the national anthem at United Center. Does it remind you at all of a NASCAR event in terms of the way people cheer and get super loud at the national anthem? It kind of sets the tone for the entire hockey game, and kind of an interesting parallel, I think, when you look at the patriotism between the national anthem at the United Center and then at a NASCAR event.
Well, I'll tell you, we need to we'll do a hat swap, when I'm up there. I got my stick on the ice. I'm ready for hockey. And, that whole atmosphere, it's electric versus other sports for all three periods, right? And then I'll tell you a funny story. At Chicagoland Speedway, over the last 2 decades, we raced out in Joliet. And a few of the years, the national anthem was played by the Blackhawks guy, right? And the crowd started doing its thing, and everybody on pit road was like, what's going on? Why are we disrespecting the anthem? I'm like, everybody just calm down. Like, the people in NASCAR didn't know about the national anthem at Blackhawks.
That's good that there was a Chicago expert in the crowd, Kaylee, to just let everybody know what the situation was.
Every player, I mean, we talked to a lot of players because there's a lot of new faces in the Blackhawks locker room this season, and everybody pretty much will attest that it's the best national anthem in hockey by far. Really emotional, like Chris said, a lot of fun. I want to go back really quickly just because you're going to be in the broadcast booth on Thursday, and I caught a little bit of you broadcasting the last race that your team won, 23-11, and you mentioned how good of a driver Tyler Reddick is, and he was driving your car, right? 45?
Yes. Yeah, he's now taking over.
Okay, so how was the, I mean, first of all, you do a phenomenal job broadcasting, so it'll be fun to watch you and Chris in the booth on Thursday for the Blackhawks games. But second of all, how was that experience for you watching him win? And he dominated from what I saw going into victory lane, and it seemed like you got a little emotional towards the end of that too. What did that win mean to you, just kind of freshly coming off that while we have you?
I appreciate that. That was my first ever cup race that I've called in NASCAR. I've done the secondary series and then the truck series over the last 2-3 years. And that was my one race that they said, all right, we need you at COTA for the road course. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's one that Monster is sponsoring, and that's one that Tyler Reddick, the kid that took over for driving the car, he's like, yeah, I circled that one, because I really love the road course action. And so it was a perfect storm. I mean, it's almost like a one and done, drop the mic. I'm out for broadcasting on the cup side. So I'm looking forward to it. Hanging out with different sports, doing different things, not racing full time anymore. Gives me opportunities to branch out and to explore, whether it's TV, different fun events with Monster Energy, different fun events with Toyota. I'm sure there'll be pace car rides that I need to take you guys on before the Chicago street race.
Whoa.
Sign us up. We're ready. We're ready.
Yeah, we'll get a couple of the players out there. I mean, it's going to be a fun festival all week long, and it's a July 4th weekend. I think the race is Sunday the 2nd, but it just kicks off, the peak of summer with us racing in the city streets. Something very new, something very different. So put your chaos hat on. Let's go.
So it's a street race, though.
Yeah.
So it's not traditional. It's not like an oval. Like, what do you think about it's in a new market and just that concept in general, how good that might be for NASCAR viewership and what you're trying to accomplish here with everything going on that weekend? It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's going to take a tremendous effort all the way around, whether it's from the TV side of it, the production side, the NASCAR side, the teams, the safety aspect of keeping the drivers and the fans and everyone within the boundaries of it, the getting into the track, getting out, the atmosphere. Hopefully the weather cooperates. That's usually number one in this day and age with sports. But we are prepared in NASCAR to race in the rain. And, with all the different elements that we've put ourselves through, NASCAR has in the last few years, we can pull off anything at this point. And so this is pretty much the top adventure. And that's what we're going to try to pull off.
We're talking with Kurt Busch. He's a NASCAR Cup Series champion He's an avid Chicago sports fan, and a Chicago NASCAR event, a street race, is coming to the Windy City in July. Kurt's talking about that. Now, from a skill set perspective, what would it be like for an established stock car racer to transition to street racing? What are the differences in skill set there?
Yeah, I think a quick comparison is Formula One races quite a bit on street circuits, like Monaco. They're in Azerbaijan. They just raced in Saudi Arabia, and that's kind of more of a hybrid style street course. IndyCar for years has raced the Long Beach Grand Prix, which is on city streets in California. They did Nashville last year, streets of Toronto. So for NASCAR, it's new, but this has been done before. And it just takes a team and a driver's mentality to adapt to anything and everything, because there's going to be, asphalt corners, there's going to be concrete corners, there's going to be manhole covers, there's going to be jumps and imperfections that are part of, not jumps, but just bumps and things that are not normal for our normal smooth road courses that are permanent.
You mentioned Formula One, Kurt, and the popularity of Formula One in the United States has skyrocketed with the Netflix documentary that came out. What is your kind of take on the rise of Formula One popularity as it relates to NASCAR, and does that make NASCAR nervous? Is it a case of a rising tide lifts all boats with popularity to the sport in general? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it helps all motorsports. And at the end of the day, getting into somewhat politics, but mainly the manufacturers, with Mercedes, with McLaren, Ferrari, Aston Martin, they sell the majority of their cars here in the U.S. We're the number one market for that type of buyer. And that's why you see Toyota, Ford, and Chevrolet so heavily involved in NASCAR, because it puts that brand out there, and our fans, our blue collar, hardworking fans, have those types of cars. And that's where we're out there racing to win. And then we want to sell the cars on Monday when people go, man, that guy was fast, or, that car really did its job this weekend, and I want to go and have one of those.
Have you watched Drive to Survive, Kurt?
I've seen a few episodes. I need to binge it and go through everything, because I was actually on the TV broadcast with Gunther Steiner, who runs the Haas F1 American program. He's an animal.
So do you think something like that might be good for NASCAR as well, just getting ratings up, viewership? I know you said it's good for everything in the sport, but specifically just from a competition standpoint, where do you think NASCAR can go? I mean, you have this veteran presence, leadership, championship pedigree yourself now, and you're still so involved. Where do you think NASCAR needs to go from getting just more people involved in it, watching it, and getting excited about it?
Yeah, we need to be on that. There has to be the cooperation and the collaboration between the teams, the drivers, and our TV partners. It needs to be done. I'm maybe because I'm 44 years old and I've done everything in NASCAR, won a lot of stuff, I've wrecked a lot of stuff. I just think we just need more eyeballs, and I don't really have, any kind of second remorse about it. Let's go. Let's just do it. But others are a bit more conservative. And so those are the ones that we have to convince that this will help raise the whole tide for everyone.
Man, that happens in so many areas. You've got people that are used to the way things were done, which in some cases might be very, very successful. And then there's that tug of war between, a different mindset that's trying to maybe push the envelope a little bit or move the sport in this case forward. That's just an interesting tug of war dynamic there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a balance, and then at the same time, it's all about chasing the checkered flag and putting on a good show and having that genuine sport where people show up to root for. And what makes NASCAR different and motorsports different than any other sport is that you have 40 race teams. You have 40 drivers to root for every weekend. And when it's stick and ball sports or hockey, you know, it's just one-on-one. It's going to be Blackhawks against the Blues, right? And so our group and our core fans, they got multiple different channels to go and root for.
Well, listen, and real quick, from a TV perspective, Kurt, the street race in Chicago is going to look great on camera. I mean, you were telling me about the route. It's down Michigan Avenue. It's around the Buckingham Fountain in Grant Park and right back up Michigan Avenue. In the summer, it's going to be gorgeous. The lakefront is going to look great. The skyline is going to look great. I mean, it is going to be an awesome product on television. That'll look really, really good.
It's going to be incredible. I mean, I've heard some sponsors, some team owners are looking at getting some boats to park out on the lake, on Lake Michigan. You know, the playpen's just around the corner. But then again, just the city streets and being downtown and having access to all the restaurants, the nightlife, great hotels. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about bringing racing to a city center and putting on this type of event.
Well, Chris and I are definitely going to throw down, as you said, with you, Kurt. We can't wait. The boats would be a very nice touch with this race. That could be incredible from everything.
Hey, easy. I might be able to get pit passes. I don't know about boat passes.
Say no more. We're already going to be there. You can't take that back now. Blackhawks are definitely going to have a presence there, no question. Chris and I would love to be there. What's been your experience just being around the Blackhawks? I don't know how much you were here during, you know, their reign, 3 Stanley Cups in a decade. Just obviously it's super cool, you know, hearing about your relationship and partnership with Michael Jordan, but what sort of relationships have you grown with some of the Blackhawks players? Unfortunately, Patrick Kane's not here anymore. It's been a lot of turnover, but do you have any fun stories or memories that you can think of, whether it's Cubs or Blackhawks, of players that you kind of went out with and grew relationships with while you were here?
Yeah, it's been unique over the years, just with all the different sports in Chicago, right? And, you know, with the players kind of switching in, switching out, I haven't met the owner of the Blackhawks to say thank you and to appreciate his commitment to the city and to that arena and to the environment that's around the dynasty that the Blackhawks have had and experienced, right? You always just want to say thanks. I got a chance to meet Mr. McCaskey, Brian McCaskey, a few years back with the Bears, and then Mr. Ricketts with the Cubbies. And my first response is always just to say thank you for continuing to push and to be, you know, like the third largest market. We're in charge there, right? Chicago's in charge of that whole Midwest. And we make St. Louis look small when it's time. You know, Cleveland, I don't know if they exist, but I don't want to get in trouble with those fans. You know, and then of course it's just that whole group of Chicagoans that make the city vibrant. And I'm always happy to say it's my second hometown.
So what would you do, though, if the Blackhawks and the Golden Knights played in the Western Conference Finals?
That would be a tough one. I'd have to go to all the games, right? If I'm in Chicago, you know what hat I'd wear. If I'm in Vegas, you might know what hat I'd wear.
Have you done the horn for the Golden Knights, Kurt? I feel like you were meant for that.
Oh, yeah. No, I handled that pretty darn good. I had 2 beers in me, and I was ready to go.
Gassed up for it.
For sure. No, it's a great atmosphere there, and I'm excited about Thursday with opening day with the Cubbies, and then definitely got to catch a Bears game as soon as I can, and that way I can check off all 3 this summer or while the weather's warm.
That's a great summer, or even 2023 sports checklist there, and we're happy to get it started with the Blackhawks against the Blues. You mentioned your partnership with Jordan Brand Racing, and did it ever come up in the interview process about how big of a sneakerhead you are? We hear you've got quite a collection, and did that to help win MJ over a little bit too? What do we got here? What have you got on today?
Yeah, we got, this is a freshie today.
Oh,
lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice classic. I had maybe a few dozen pairs before, and now I've got over 100 that I get to bridge in and out, and so now I'm matching wardrobe each and every day. I was able to wear with the broadcast booth this past weekend. I had 3 suits and I had 3 sets of sneakers, and everybody's like, "All right, I see it, I get it."
Did you do a shoey after you won?
Oh man, that's a great. We missed that.
There you go.
Oh my God. Maybe at our team party.
Okay.
Maybe at our team party.
Are you going to bring one of your nicer one? A freshie? At least it won't
freshie.
be. Okay, a freshie is probably a better idea if you're going to do a shoey.
Heck yeah, we'll pour one of the new Monster Beasts. Monster has a new alcohol drink out. It's called the Beast.
Oh boy.
So I think we have a good game plan here.
Where does the Beast take you, Kurt? Where does that rank in all the new seltzers and spikes? I can only imagine a Monster alcohol drink.
Let's call it pole position.
There you go. You got to say that after you drink a shoey.
Yeah, I like it. So it's a fun brand. There's always like a different collaboration with an athlete coming by to see our NASCAR races. When I was in Charlotte, they had the ACC tournament here for college basketball. So I was able to wear my Tar Heel baby blue and white and represent. And keep an eye out. There's other NASCAR races where you're going to see the Jordan brand logo on our race car.
So what's the setup at home with over 100 pair of shoes? Do you have a big closet, or what are we looking at in Carolina right now? A race car or a race track in the back?
So half the garage I ended up putting shelves in, and so they're out there hanging out with some of the cars. So it's a cool little man cave.
Love it.
Here's the thing, though, Kurt. As your broadcast career continues to take off, having the full suit with shoes for 3 different it becomes a little bit easier to maybe do like 2 shirts for the 3 broadcast event. Maybe just you're gonna want to condense your wardrobe a little bit just for the sake of convenience.
All right, so yeah, actually I was made fun of by my social media group and some of my marketing people that came with me. I was in Daytona for Bike Week. I was there for 11 days, and we're doing different events on Supercross, flat track, and then the super bike race, right? And then there's Harleys everywhere. There's all kinds of fun parties. And when I was grabbing my suitcase to move from one hotel to the other, I had 3 suitcases. And the girls were like, "Why do you have 3 suitcases?" I'm like, "Well, 2 of them are for shoes." And they're just like,
"Oh my God."
I'm that guy.
You have to. You got to protect them too.
Yes, I'm that guy. Oh yeah, all of them have the water repellent spray on.
There we go.
I take them out.
Oh.
Suede spray before you do a race.
You know what's going down.
Well, I'm ready. I can't wait for you, me, and Chris to do a shoey when you're in Chicago for the street race too. Win or lose, I still fully expect to do that.
I like it. Yeah, you guys got to send me your
Is your brother going to be in town?
Yes, Kyle will be there for the race. He'll be racing. We got Bubba Wallace on our team with the Toyota, Tyler Reddick. I believe it'll be a Monster-sponsored race, and then McDonald's will most likely be with Bubba Wallace. They're headquartered there in Chicago, so they're a great partner with us.
Kurt, what can you say about a good old Toyota Camry? I grew up in a Camry household. I drive one now, obviously, proudly around the city of Chicago. There's a good amount of Toyotas that you'll see in Chicago. It's funny, I used to live in Michigan, and I swear I had the only Camry in the entire state. I mean, it's all Chevy, Ford in Michigan. God bless them. But the Camry, I never would have thought that Camry would have made a good racing car. You mean I'm just cruising around in a V4 hybrid. But what's it like racing a Camry?
Yeah, for us with Camry, TRD, Toyota Racing Development, takes it to the next level. There's Gazoo Garage, that's from Japan, and they're outfitting different Supras, Toyota Supras right now, and that's in the secondary series in NASCAR. But for us, top level, the Camry is a V8. It's awesome to race because of Toyota's development program with the simulators. The engines come from California. The cars are built in North Carolina for our racing program. But then a Camry is built here in the U.S., and they've been around racing for almost 2 decades now. And it should be just easily said to compare to, those guys that are up in Michigan.
For some of the more NASCAR like nerds, I will say, because I don't know the technology as well, Kurt, but for those of our NASCAR fans that are maybe interested in the technology behind the cars that are going to be present at the race, like what is it like driving some of these newer cars compared to some of the ones that you've done in the last 10 years or so, and where it's at, and what you're looking forward to seeing from that point at this race this summer in Chicago?
No, that's awesome. Thanks for that question. I mean, the next gen car, the new car in NASCAR, this is its second year. Very different from the driver's side. It might look very similar on the outside, but it has all the cool upgrades that the manufacturers bring for the body styles. But as far as driving it, it's a sequential gearbox now. So it's a 5-speed sequential, similar to a motorcycle engine where you got to shift through all the gears and then you got to downshift through all the gears to get back to neutral. It's not your standard manual. Big brakes, big calipers, big wheels, big tires. Like everything was expanded for braking and cornering. The sequential gearbox again is better and quicker for shifting. And then now we're with fuel injection, makes the cars fire up super easy. Everything's on a laptop for tuning. And then with our digital dash, it's not touch screen, but everything is set up digitally now as far as our temperatures, the tachometer, and our shift points, pit road numbers. It's pretty wild on our dash now. We have like 5 settings that we can page through.
Kurt, that's really interesting to hear about the evolving technology in the sport. And that's something that we come across on a regular basis covering the NHL as well. And in addition, how do you think motorsports and NASCAR specifically, I guess, is evolving with the modern fan? That's a question that the NHL is grappling with a lot as fans cut cords with their cable packages. They consume more content on social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram, and maybe don't watch the sport in the traditional way, the linear way, as much as in the past. Where do you think NASCAR is on those issues, and what are they doing to, I guess, keep recruiting, if you will, young fans?
Yeah, it's a matter of covering all areas, covering all bases, knowing where your front line is, or keeping the goalie in check, or knowing when to pull the goalie. I mean, you gotta have all the right moments and all the right tools for everybody to have access to. And some of it's new venues. That's what we're seeing in NASCAR, is we're branching out to a lot of new places. We hadn't raced in Wisconsin in like 50 years, and we went up to Road America the last couple of years, and now we have the Chicago Street Race. Nashville, we hadn't raced there in 30 years. We put dirt on one of our tracks and went old school and raced on the dirt as far as an atmosphere for dirt fans. So we're all over right now. I think we're doing great to keep the integrity and the old school fan and the old lineage together of how our sport was built. And then you get new sponsors, new groups of people that want to invest into the sport, and new partners that will benefit from their side of it, and then the teams benefit, and the growth continues in all directions. But ultimately, it's about options. Fox Sports does a great job. NBC Sports does a great job. And then the streaming side of it is going to be the next chapter.
Kurt, that's so interesting, all of it. Like I feel like I'm ready to go home and just like get ready for this summer now. And you have such a great story from the beginning of your career, your family ties, everything. I was thinking while you're explaining all the technology, like my goal, one of my like 3 or 4 goals is to do a pull-up and then also learn how to drive stick. So I just have so much respect for what you guys do behind the wheel. And I was listening to an interview once where you talked about your wife, Ashley, and how she had no interest in, or she really didn't know NASCAR before meeting you. I was curious kind of what you think for new fans, especially in the Chicago market with the race coming up this summer. What really drives new fans when they get there and they see the cars and they see the course? Like, what did your wife, Ashley, and what do you see really captivates people about the sport when they first get there and sink their teeth into it?
Yeah, one of my favorite comments that she made was we were at our smallest track in Martinsville, Virginia. I think it seats 65,000. It's one of the smallest shaped tracks. And she's blown away by it. This is huge. This is out of control. Like, oh my gosh, what? And I'm like, no, this is the small one. So it's the sights, it's the sounds, the rumble in the ground when the cars go by, the teamwork from the pit crew guys, the engineering staff, the colors, the numbers. I mean, all the kids just gravitate towards the cars with numbers, and we wear our driver suits and we look like, caped crusaders. It worked for every age and every demographic. It's a lot of fun to be part of.
Yeah, it's kind of like this event in Chicago that's coming up, by the way, and that's the Grant Park 220 on July 2nd, and then before that the Xfinity Series race on July 1st, the Loop 121. In a way, Kurt, it kind of sounds like the NASCAR version of the NHL's Winter Classic, where they play a game at an outdoor sports venue. They played a Winter Classic at Wrigley Field, for example. Where do you think this track in downtown Chicago will rank for you in terms of the most interesting or unorthodox tracks that you've raced on or participated in? What are some other kind of cool ones?
Yeah, this one will by far be the most unique and different than any other place, and our sport is ready for it. And then there's like the old school places like Darlington, South Carolina, that are still on our schedule. It's the Southern 500. It's like that true, we are in the South moment. And I think up there in Chicago, it's going to be that true street race, like, wow, with the gorgeous view of Lakeshore Drive, the city in the background, and being right there in Grant Park around the Buckingham Fountain. Like, it's just going to have that whole beauty side to it. But it's the rough and tough NASCAR guys.
And listen, I'm asking because I genuinely don't know. What do you think of the NASCAR market or NASCAR fandom in Chicago? What is the reputation of Chicago among the NASCAR community? Is it a cool town? Are there tons of fans? Are they crazy fans? What's the book on Chicago?
Yeah, it's because we haven't raced up in that region all that much. And the closest track was Joliet. But years before that, like Kansas Speedway didn't even exist, right? And everybody would come from all around the Midwest to go to the Texas race. That's down in Dallas. So now that we've expanded and we've gone through the Midwest and had races in Iowa, Joliet, Kansas, you get that core Midwestern fan that is just hardcore all about their sports. And that's what I see. I mean, you see that and feel that in New England, here in the South, out West. But the Midwest group, I mean, who doesn't like to go to Chicago? Maybe they're from St. Louis. I don't know. But everybody loves to go to Chicago.
I will say hockey has done a great job, I think, at trying to bring teams to non-traditional markets as well. We were just in Arizona. I used to work in Tampa, Florida, where the Lightning have become one of the best non-traditional markets, 2-time Stanley Cup champs in the last couple years. So it's amazing what it can do when you bring that sport into a new market like that, and they just kind of fall in love with it. So I guess for me, my question is on the lines of Chicago sports fans. Like, how easy is it to fall in love with Chicago and the Cubs? I don't know how much you celebrated the World Series or how much time you spent in Wrigleyville after that, but what is it like just being around Midwesterners in Chicago for you? I know your parents are from here, blue collar. Like, what does it mean to be a part of that sports world for you and the history that the city's had in the last few years?
I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, our Bears won in 1985, and I remember every moment with Ditka and Jim McMahon, his sweetness, Walter Payton, with MJ and the Bulls all through the 90s when I was a kid, and with the Cubbies finally breaking through in 2016. And then we always counted on the Blackhawks for that dynasty and to be a winning program and to be a championship work ethic all the time. It's an amazing sports town. People go to New York and people can go to LA. Chicago's the heat, and it's easy to fall in love with the food, the people, and the atmosphere there is always beautiful.
I completely agree. I think that's very well said, and I think that's what makes Chicago the quintessential American city. Is you've got the big city vibe that you can get on either coast, but there's also that heartland feel, and it's just you can get absolutely anything. Anybody can, any event, any organization can come to Chicago and put on an event, and there will be tons of fans because there's something for everybody. Every kind of cross section of America, I think, is represented in Chicago. So we're really excited to have you, Kurt, for sure. Before we let you go, I did want to ask you just a couple Chicago-related sports questions for you. One is related back to your beloved Chicago Cubs. I understand that you have a somewhat of a loose goal to get to every major league stadium. Is that correct? And if so, how far along your journey are you?
I was able to check off every MLB stadium before I got to the age of 35. And so anytime a new stadium is built, I got to get there the same year. So the last new one that I went to was Texas Rangers. They built a new stadium down there in Arlington. And so it's always trying to check the box of new stadiums. And if it works out perfect, it'll be when the Cubbies are visiting any new stadium.
Wow.
Well, let's try and get you to every NHL arena next. I think that would be a good kind of sequel to your MLB journey. That is very impressive, though. Bravo.
Well, thank you. I'm going to need some jackets. I don't do good in cold weather, so I mean, we'll have to bundle up.
We can do that.
Kurt, the last Chicago sports question I had for you was, of course, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan notwithstanding, who are some of your favorite Chicago athletes growing up as a kid, maybe, or even into adulthood? Who are some of your favorite Chicago athletes?
As a kid with WGN, Ryan Sandberg was on TV like every day, and he was a second baseman, and I played second base a lot when I was a little leaguer. And so he was my fave, and I got totally geeked out when I met him. I met Greg Maddux one time at a charity event and totally turned fanboy. It was really, really neat with the Cubbies. I mean, with the Bears, with Walter Payton. I met Jim McMahon at a charity baseball game one time. Brian Urlacher, that whole era, with Lovie Smith taking us to the Super Bowl in 2006. That was cool. And then with the Blackhawks, Kane obviously was the big name that I followed for a long time. And then with MJ and the Bulls, that dynasty, and then watching the documentary of The Last Dance, it's amazing, and it's an inspirational type of program and film, and you see it from all angles. You see it from Coach, you see it from Dennis Rodman, you see it from Pippen's angle, you see it from MJ. But MJ's the GOAT. There's no other that will ever be on top, and it's a blessing and it's a privilege to be able to race for him.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's an incredible honor that what he said to you earlier in the interview when you referenced your heart, and I don't think it gets any higher from a respect level than MJ kind of talking about what he sees in you and how that's what he's. How he based his whole career on the way he played and was respected. So that was cool. And I just wanted to ask really quick, too, while you mentioned some of those Bears players from when they last won the Super Bowl. A lot of them got inducted into the Chicago Sports Hall of Fame last year, a little bit late, Urlacher being one of them. I had never heard the Super Bowl Shuffle or seen that music video before. Was that high on your list of things that you loved? I thought it was one of the greatest things ever. And some of them sang it on stage after being inducted, and it was hilarious.
Oh, that's incredible. I missed that. But yeah, the Shuffle, of course. And then William the Fridge Perry. I was always waiting for the next commercial on what they were going to do with refrigerators.
That's awesome.
And then Ditka.
That was some...
Yeah, Ditka, right? With his cigars. And what's Ditka up to next? Yeah, he's legend.
Iconic.
Yeah, exactly. Still an icon here in Chicago. Kurt, this has been a ton of fun. We've really enjoyed, Kaylee and I, broadening our NASCAR knowledge. The NASCAR street event that's coming to Chicago in early July sounds like a blast. The Chicago street race coming in July 1st and 2nd, in particular the Sunday, July 2nd race, the Grant Park 220, a 12-turn, 2.2-mile course. It's great to hear about the ways in which NASCAR is trying to grow the sport. That's something that we're trying to do as well on the NHL side of things. And it's great to have you at a Blackhawks game against the St. Louis Blues, and looking forward to having you in the booth. So thanks so much for coming on the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. We really appreciate it, and good luck with the continued development of the sport. And we can't wait to have you back in Chicago in July.
No, thank you very much. It's always fun to do some cool cross promotions. And Toyota was telling me I better get my stick on the ice because they might have me out there to try to fling a puck into the net. I am the worst skater. I am horrible at skating. So help me out, guys. Throw out a rug or something.
They will.
Hey,
They'll put out a rug for
if
him, right?
you take us for a spin in a car, I will gladly put on skates with you and take a few laps around the United Center.
Oh, like it. Yes, we can learn how to do stick shift, and we'll learn how to do ice skating.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, guys.
We'll talk down the road. Really appreciate it. All right. Thank you very much once again to Kurt Busch. And yeah, Kaylee, let's follow up with Kurt about those pit tickets. I'm down.
All over it. I'm going to be the biggest NASCAR fan after this interview. I'm ready.
Let's get into Sellies and Chirps. You know the drill. Each of us brings a topic to the discussion panel and invite either a Selly or a Chirp designation. This is going to seem really crazy, but my Selly or Chirp is blubber. And the hockey tie is on a recent shootout game-winning goal by Boston Bruins' Jake DeBrusk. Jack Edwards, my counterpart with the Boston Bruins, the television announcer, had a pretty epic quote when DeBrusk scored the game-winning goal. He said, "Strip the blubber from the whale and burn it." And, that's a very graphic, visceral description, that harkens back to the days when whale blubber was used as a source of heat, and oil, back in the days before our creature comforts of central air.
Save the whales, Chris.
Save the whales.
I don't want to be thinking about that after I win.
I assume that this was done sustainably. This stripping of the blubber from the whale and burning it. I don't know. If there was, okay, they're playing the Carolina Hurricanes. That's kind of sea related. I don't know if that brought to mind the whale blubber necessarily.
Chance I wouldn't be laughing if you said that on a goal and I had to follow that up after a shootout victory.
So what do you think? I mean, what do you think? Would you what do you think of the call? Would you sell or chirp it? If it were my call, I mean, would you be thinking I was crazy? Or listen, I like it. I personally like it. I think it it makes you, well, it certainly makes you stop and think. I like that it's a little bit out there, but what about you, Kaylee? Do you think I
celebrate it because I like to laugh. I think it's funny. That would totally catch me off guard. That image in my head after the goal is not what I would have anticipated. So I will celebrate it in the creativity aspect. I love when play-by-play guys and girls can bring in a different element. So it's very creepy in some sense to think about that image and harvesting blubber after Jake DeBrusk scores a goal like that while also being invested in the energy of the crowd. But I'll celebrate it with you, Chris. I think the creativity aspect and the laugh is worth it. And
remember, because I know Jack, he's a great guy. He's very smart. The team that preceded the Carolina Hurricanes, the Hartford Whalers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
was that what the connection was?
I think that may have been where he was going.
That is a stretch, but I think
deep.
that fits even more. It's very deep. Yeah, it's much deeper than I thought. I think I might be speechless after trying to connect the dots if you said that to me.
Well, full disclosure, this is now turning into a spin-off, Selly and Chirp. We thought that when we initially saw the text from the call, we thought that that the word was flubber and not blubber. And so that we were actually going to make a Selly or Chirp about the movie Flubber, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And
of course it is. Did you catch my shoulders? Who am I?
Are you Flubber?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
He moves like this.
He's acting like Flubber.
My favorite movie. I can't believe you didn't pick up on that.
Yes. I mean, I was like, well, you're definitely not acting like Weibo. So,
I'm not as smart as Weibo is, but I can definitely do Flubber. I'm glad to know that that's your favorite movie, though. I'll celebrate that too, Chris.
Hard to say what Robin Williams' greatest work is. I know Scott Darling's a big Robin Williams fan. You got to ask him what he.
I want you to work in
Flubber
Flubber.
ranks.
I want you to work Flubber into your broadcast next season. That's one of my goals. In addition to driving stick with Kurt, I'd also like you to work in Flubber.
But you're giving me next season for that.
Oh, okay. If you want to be bold, please do this season.
Okay.
I'll be listening.
Who am I?
And I want you to do that at the same time with Sharpie.
There'll be oh my god.
You think Sharpie can throw the shoulders, or Troy?
Sharpie maybe. Sharpie, I don't think Sharpie would.
Sharpie might have the flubber shoulders.
He might have the flubber shoulders, so.
Okay. We'll test it out.
We'll test it out. I'll report
Okay.
back.
I'll go next. On that note, we were talking about engagements at sporting events earlier today. So you were engaged this year, Chris, not at a sporting event, but are you celebrating or chirping getting engaged or proposing at a sporting event? And if you need to go into any more detail, I think my biggest thing with that is that you have to be 100% sure, right, that they're going to say yes, which I would think that you'd have that confidence ahead of time. But are you celebrating or chirping the engagements at a sporting event?
Well, again, I think having gone through this process myself and now planning a wedding, my perspective is so much different, and it really has got to come down to the couple, and if it's the couple style or not. So for me, there was a proposal on the ice at the United Center not that long ago, following the second intermission shoot the puck, and I had a moment of insecurity, thinking like, oh man, like I should have done something like a big bang like that, something really cool. But when Liz and I were talking about getting married, she made it very clear that she did not want any kind of public display. So had I done that, I might have gotten the thumbs down. Might have gotten turned down.
Postponed.
Yeah, TBD. I'll have to let you know. Let me get back to you on that. But so we did it our way, and she loved it. She was thrilled. The only other person that was there for the proposal was Blackhawks team photographer Chase Agnello-Dean, who showed up to take some incognito photos. So that's what worked out great for us. But I celebrate the in-arena proposal. I think it's cool. I would have done it had I gotten the green light from Liz. I would have the wheels would have been spinning for something like that. So I like it. You get the crowd involved. I think the crowd loves it. The one thing I will
like a
say,
true play-by-play person.
Thank you. The one thing, that's what I am. The one thing I will say, just as a counterpoint, though, is sometimes it's a little rushed, right? You gotta hurry up and get down on one knee, and
Which knee did you pick?
Okay.
Did you have an intention on which knee? Yes. Do you remember?
I had no intention. I mean, naturally, I think it was probably my left knee.
My brother was nervous,
Does that
and that's
matter?
how we knew he was. I don't know. I was actually wondering because I knew my brother was a little nervous. He also got engaged this year. He texted our family because we were like, "Don't blow it," and he was like, "Which knee do I
Oh, wow.
do it?" And I was like, "I don't think it matters, does it? Is there a proper knee?" But
Listen,
it's all a blur.
hat tip to Jake Chelios. I mean, that is a very detailed level of thinking right there. I mean, he was not going to miss anything. So wow, that's
Not
impressive.
anything. Well, I will say too with the public sporting events. I mean, a lot can go wrong, and then it's on public if it doesn't go right, especially on the ice. I know they have the rollout mats, but I'm just thinking like if you drop it or you slip, or then it's really public, right?
That's a great point. And if you slip, do you just say, all right, do you pull the plug, like, all right, I'm not.
You just wear a
I'm not
helmet before
proposing,
you
like,
do it.
If I slipped and fell, I would probably be like, all right, like I'm pulling the emergency parachute here.
I would love to
Plan
see you in
B,
like a
plan
full
B.
cage getting engaged.
Bubble wrap.
Liz is lucky. I will say Liz is lucky. You did a great job. I'm very proud of you, Chris, doing it in private
Thank you.
and not with the big stage. So celebrating the idea, but I'm also celebrating your decision to do it in a more intimate setting.
How did Danny propose to you?
I planned the whole thing myself unintentionally.
You planned the whole thing?
He's a genius. Yeah. It's like, let's go out to a nice dinner. I had just got my nails done. I just got a new outfit. I planned everything from my new outfit to the place we were picking, and he just he went for it. Like on the roof, actually, it was really nice, but I thought it was so funny. If I hadn't picked everything, I was like, where were we going to go? Or what were we going to do? And so it worked out great. We went to a new rooftop in Tampa. I'll have to tell our good friend Colby about the spot when he goes to cover the Frozen Four there. And I was all ready to go on my own accord and basically designed my own proposal. And his brother was there to take the picture. He had brought the ring from Chicago with him. So it worked out great. No complaints.
You are a mastermind, Kaylee. You really are.
Genius.
Yes, you
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Well, my biggest tip to anybody who's thinking about proposing to a significant other, make sure that they get their nails done beforehand.
That would be nice. It was crazy. I had my nails done that day.
That's the big thing. If the nails aren't done, then you might never live it down.
Just don't get engaged.
That's right. Word to the wise. By the way, forget an engagement. There's a wedding taking place at the United Center this week.
Very rushed, I would think that's going to be, but also really cool. I've never seen a wedding, and at the United Center, it's going to be a good crowd. Is Kurt going to be there for that?
I'm not sure. I was just thinking. I've never crashed a wedding though, so maybe.
There we go. Maybe me, and Kurt will get in there and do some shoeies to celebrate.
Wedding crashers, yeah.
Wedding crashers.
I've always been on my bucket list. Okay.
Well, we did it.
This was an off the rails episode with Kurt Busch and an off the rails Sellies and Chirps as well. You got anything else, Kaylee, before we say so long? Flubber.
Nope.
Flubber
I'm out.
is back in the building. Kaylee Chelios as Flubber in the end credits.
My next Halloween costume.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just put Jello all over myself.
Yeah, gosh, or you could encased in
that would
crazy.
take some work, but I'm with you. Let's work on that.
Well, we still got time. 6 months.
You can be Weibo.
I'll be
Scott will be Robin Williams.
Yeah, we'll be the whole kit and caboodle. I'll be dressed in yellow.
With the
That's
one
all I
eye,
gotta
right?
do for
Weibo
Weibo.
had some kind of eye.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I got time to think
We'll
about
think
that.
about it, yeah.
In and around our summer of NASCAR races and Halloween costume planning. So we will be back.
I got my next Selly and Chirp.
Oh, you do?
Next
Okay.
week. Uh-huh.
Well, there is the tease for next week's episode, our first of the month of April, as we barrel toward a conclusion on this regular season of Blackhawks hockey. We want to thank all of you for joining in today. Remember, more content is available at blackhawks.com. Thanks as always to Brad Dollar and Southside Jake for the music featured on the podcast. Thanks once again to the sponsors of this Blackhawks Insider Podcast, ChevyDrivesChicago.com. Drive what the captain Jonathan Toews drives. And as always, we will be back next week for another episode of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast.